If you're going to take the leap of moving to another country and doing something drastic, take the leap. Don't go to the expat hub and work out of a co-working space with a bunch of New Yorkers and people from LA. Then you're still going to live have the American perspective and trying to lead an American life in a foreign country.
That is Mike Savas, today's guest, a guy that can really fire you up, as you heard there. He's no stranger to taking the leap himself. This conversation took place online, but Mike was actually in an old pizza factory in Portugal he had bought to renovate into a boutique hotel. One of the many amazing things this guy's done since quitting his corporate job to live his best life and travel, which originally led him to join John Bon Jovi's team, the famous band Bon Jovi, where he created one of the first international VIP programs, which then led him to starting his agency, which is a VIP experience company. They had done over $100 million in revenue. Their current clients include Oprah, Barack Obama, the Rolling Stones, Eminem, among others. Today, you're going to hear some of the biggest lessons learned from working alongside some of those folks, his 2 methods for living your best life, which path he took and why, the beauty about making a decision and getting off the fence if you're struggling to make one, this is for you, plus how to get in tune with your instincts and let them guide you, and so much more. Ton happening in this episode right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. You can learn more about our guest today over at Savas on the Go, his website, Savas onthego.com. Of course, his agency is VIP Experience Agency Super, as we are super.co. We'll link up to that in the show notes. Travel-wise, Mike has done a ton. I mean, he traveled to Nepal to help out after the earthquake, raising $50,000. We talk about his experience there on the ground, just going and showing up and trying to figure out a way to help. He also has embarked on a quest to learn 12 new skills in 12 months at one point, attempting to learn surfing in Costa Rica, salsa dancing in Colombia. We talk about that and just loads more. A lot of value in this conversation. Now you're going to dig it. Stick around on the back end. You know, this phrase, living your best life. Mike shares some advice for living your best life. I know it sounds like a platitude, but I find that phrase to be okay. Like, I'm okay with saying live your best life, because I think that you can't strive for perfection. You know, you can't live the perfect life, and who you are is always changing. So to just say living your best life, I feel like that puts me in the present and you know, not too much pressure on like, am I living my best life every second of every day? I don't think of it that way, but to me, it's like an overarching concept, like, am I on a path that is me living my best life? It doesn't have to be like every single day I'm super duper smiley. It just means, am I on that general road of living my best life? And if that's changing, if I'm changing, where's the road that's going to guide me and keep me on that, which is where some of the instinct and intuition comes in, which is what I will talk about on the back end. I think this is one of the easiest ways to always be living your best life. You'll hear Mike talk about this in the interview. Stick around for that. And also, one last thing before we dive in, if you go to zerototravel.com/newsletter, if you love the pod, you want to get more, you want to keep in touch with the community, and yeah, just be in touch. It's free. You can sign up over there. You should do that. Now, let's get into today's show, and I will see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers. Mike Savas, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Now you're full-time in Portugal?
I live in Portugal. Full-time is not the words I associate with, but by many means. I've been on the road for 15 years and still to this day.
But what does Portugal have that New Jersey doesn't? I mean, come on.
Well, I'm sitting in a 100-year-old pasta factory that we're renovating into a luxury boutique hotel right now to start, and really cute coffee cups.
Nice. You do a lot of real estate stuff there, right? From what I gathered through the grapevine, you have some themed Airbnbs, maybe? Was that you?
Yeah, absolutely. So real estate's sort of the next chapter of life that I'm stepping into. I have 7 properties currently, 4 of which are themed Airbnbs, and now we're getting into more commercial and residential assets. So coming from a hospitality and events background, looking to open up these very unique, state-of-the-art, but also culturally centric event spaces in Iberia. So Portugal, Spain, Italy, maybe Morocco. Not that all of those countries are Iberia, but needless to say, that's the market I'm looking into, and we're just getting started on that chapter.
Why do you want to get involved in that business? But what is it that's exciting?
Oh, most likely I'm a reincarnated Portuguese conquistador coming back to reconquer my native land. But we won't talk about that. No, needless to say, it's exciting. I feel more connected to the European lifestyle. Had a great time, growing up in America and all the opportunity it provided. But I see what it's like over here, and it just calls on me more. Have worked hard to enable a lifestyle that is location independent, can run my business from here. And frankly, having been raised with a sort of New York, East Coast mindset, whether it be hustle culture or opportunity culture, it also gives me an opportunity to make a larger and more profound impact here because of the inherent differences of perspective. So it's exciting, and I think I can do good work here.
Does that come down to, like, if you had to distill that down, is that like slowing down a bit when you said the sort of the difference in lifestyle, and you mentioned the hustle culture from the East Coast, which I'm very familiar with, or opportunity culture, like you said, if you wanted to reframe it and be kind?
No, I wouldn't say slowing down at all. It's just reframing energy output and workflow. So one thing I've become present to is the ability to do more by staying in one place. And by no means am I staying in one place. For perspective, I used to travel probably about 100 flights per year. I'm down to about 70 flights per year. So whereas I used to be on the road every 2 or 3 days, now I try to be in a city every 4 or 5 days, if not 2 weeks. So even though that still sounds like an incredible amount of time on the road, which it is, I've realized that if I can get it to 2 weeks or even a month in a city, I can achieve much more. Whereas in the past, my mentality was framed around I have to be on the go in order to create more. Now I realize I can create more being in one location because of the network and team I built around me.
Yeah. I was nomadic for 10 years back in the day. And when I was coming off the road and trying to be more permanent somewhere, personally, I found it was a bit of a struggle. Like, I felt like I was being pulled between these two worlds, and part of my setup, I suppose, maybe even part of my identity, was still living the nomadic life as I was trying to transition to the next phase. Have you had any, has it been a struggle at times to kind of flip that balance?
Oh, most certainly. Many past relationships failed, many business partners left to the wayside. It takes about 8 years to find a rhythm in this lifestyle. And I can say most people who are attracted to it tend to fall off within years 2 or 3. And by years 4 or 5, they either don't make it by years 2 or 3. By years 4 through 6, they're sort of over it. And then between 6 and 8, you finally figure it out.
It is ironic in some ways that, I don't know, as a traveler, you find that freedom in the sort of the spontaneity and also the openness. But on the flip side, I found that when you also commit in some ways, that gives you more freedom in other ways, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. And I've seen it myself.
One of your core philosophies, it seems to be at like the heart of a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is from your website, and which we're linked to all this in the show notes. But you said, I believe we all have the power to curate our lives by riding the waves of opportunities that come our way while knowing when to jump ship, sometimes literally, and transferring energy from one area of our lives to another. And this is this is what we're talking about in many ways right now. Can you expand on that a bit?
Certainly. You've heard the saying, opportunities are like waves. You just decide which one to hop onto. There's always another one coming right behind it. And I've sort of attached to that visual concept, if you will. It doesn't really matter which wave you catch. They're all going to have, some will be more exciting than others. Some are going to make you fall harder than others. But ultimately, it's just about getting up on that wave and finding a way to be unattached to how the ride is, because you don't know. You just decide to paddle out, and you can sit sort of in the pool or on the beach for as long as you want. But ultimately, you're going to go out. So you might as well just jump into the freezing cold and start paddling, because as soon as you start paddling, it gets easier. The worst part is sitting on the beach, wondering what it's like to be cold. Once you're in there, it ain't as bad as you thought it was.
That's bad. And also, to go further with the surfing metaphor, I always found it so difficult when you're trying to just get out to the wave and you keep getting beat back. You can't even get to the freaking wave, man.
Look, that's life, right? The getting started, building the momentum is the toughest part. Once you have momentum, it's so much easier to keep it going.
Yeah. Well, when I got the email about having you on here, and one of the bullet points was about you. He quit a corporate job to live his best life and travel. This led him to Bon Jovi's team, where he created one of the first international VIP programs. I want to talk about your VIP programs and what you do there, but this is, of course, a very general bullet point. And where I'm going with this is I wanted to get your advice on taking the practical steps to quote unquote live your best life, because I feel like there's always going to be some people listening that are kind of maybe in that mode right now, where they know inside there's something else they should be doing. Perhaps it's something bigger than them in some ways, or maybe a bit intimidating, or just maybe they're not even clear what that is, but they feel like there's another version of life right now that is their best life, and they're not living it right now. But it's kind of hard to figure out how to quote unquote live your best life, going from stable salary, kind of, I don't know what that journey was like for you, and maybe through your story you can illustrate some of the lessons learned and some advice.
Definitely. And look, there's plenty of pieces of good advice out there and different ways to go about it. I have an answer to your question framed in two different methods, one of which I took and one of which I recommend. And the method I took was, burn all the ships and jump in and leave no other option but to succeed, which certainly works, but that's terrifying for most. The other method is build your side hustle or your dream life or whatever that thing is in the background, so you can have what I've been taught is you can have your job and you can have your work. Your job is how you make money, support yourself, and your work is what you're passionate about and sort of your gift back to the world. So you can have these things in tandem, and I look at it like a seesaw. Whereas you might just have your job now and no work. Well, can you rebalance those? Can you reframe those over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4 years until maybe, if you're lucky, the work outweighs the job and there is no more job, or maybe, it's somewhere teeter-tottering like this. So I think both methods are fine. One is for the more risk excited, and one's for the more risk adverse. So choose your path. But really, it's just about stepping. You never figure it out. You just keep taking one step, one stroke in front of the other, and do your best. And either you get up on the wave or you don't, or you fall. You eat shit or you don't, and you paddle back out. So anyone who claims to have it all figured out is lying, and we're all just doing our best.
Yeah, I mean, there's the clarity portion though as well, because like you had to make a conscious choice to get into the business you're in now. For example, you started your company, Super, which we'll talk about. But in terms of clarity, how did you go about, or how do you go about getting clarity to make a hard choice, a firm choice in one direction or the other? Well,
the beauty about a decision is instant, right? A decision is a moment in time, and it's the most difficult and the easiest thing to do in the same exact singular moment. So the decision part is the easy part. And once you've made a decision, then it's just enacting the steps. I had absolutely no clarity. So let me be clear. I had nothing but uncertainty. But I had clarity. The only clarity I had is that I wanted to lead a different life. And I followed my intuition. getting involved with Bon Jovi was never even an idea. Starting this company I had.
Oh, you didn't have that sketched out? Like, yeah, I'm just going to quit and get involved with Bon Jovi. You know, that sounds like such a New Jersey dream.
Yeah, exactly. No, so
you were living on a prayer, man. All right, no, we're going to stop. We're not going to, I swear that's going to be the only one.
Look, I got a piece of advice recently, and it's super simple, right? It's like, what are instincts? How do you feel instincts? And if you just take a moment and whatever the thing is that you're debating between, whether it be a partner or a job, like go this direction, that direction. If you just sit in that for a minute and ask yourself, is this thought making me feel expansive, or is this thought making me feel constricted, like in your gut, in your chest? And you know the answer to that right away. Do I feel expansive when I'm thinking about this person or this job? And that's your instinct. So you just tune into that. Now in reflection, I can look back and say that's kind of what I did. But at the time, I was just feeling excitement, and I was feeling like this. It was more friction, right? It was like, I don't like this job. I should be doing something else. But now I have a little bit more growth and emotional IQ, and I can say, oh yeah, that was just instincts talking. So, again, all of these things we hear they're a little bit cliche, but when you follow your instincts, the steps appear. So you take the first step, you see the next stone. You take the next step, you see the next stone. And then in retrospect, you have what's called clarity. But looking forward, the clarity is only a decision to take the next step.
The restrictive thing can be tricky because sometimes that's the thing that your practical mind argues for, right? Because it's the safe thing or the seemingly safe thing on the surface, let's say. Like in your case, let's say quitting your corporate job, like the corporate job, or somebody's case, it might be the thing that doesn't make them feel expansive, but because it's the safe thing, that sort of moment of expansion you feel thinking about something else is now kind of countered by your mind going, well, come on, you can't do this. That's crazy. You got a mortgage, you got, all these things. It's kind of hard to block that out sometimes, Well,
I think you're kind of alluding to two different things. One is logic and rationale, and the other is instincts. And that the at least the way I sense it, and maybe other people feel differently, is when I feel that constriction or expansiveness. Yes, quite often logic comes in right away and tries to smack it down, but that's a different part of the spirit or the mind or whatever. So what I'm saying is just tune into that emotional frequency, and that's your instincts. So then you can get as logical as you want about it. And going back to like module A, module B that I was previously referenced, you can then make the decision. You can choose to be the person that takes the leap, or the person that like puts in the action steps and ticks all the boxes and so on and so forth.
Right. How did you get involved in the music industry? Are you a big music fan? Is music a big part of your life? Has it been growing up?
No more than most, honestly. Loved blasting music in my Jeep and having a good time. It raised my emotional frequency. So decided early I just wanted to be in music. Used to want to be a record label exec and then a radio DJ, and tried all those things, but couldn't quite find the niche. So the job that I left was at Atlantic Records, which was my first job, real job after college. And even though it was still in music, it was not gratifying to the degree that I thought it would be. And I just knew there was more, having been able to travel at a younger age. I did semester at sea, so I sailed around the world on a university boat. And if anyone listening hasn't heard of it, best program I've ever done, 600 college students, really reframes you as a human and grounds you in the idea of being a global citizen at a young age. So it reframes how you approach the world. So having been blessed with that opportunity, stepping into corporate America, I know there's other ways of living life and doing things, and I'm willing to risk it all to bet that I can be happier. So yeah.
But then how does it go from that to working with Bon Jovi?
There were some unique connection points along the way there that, again, only in retrospect, do they make sense. So when I left Atlantic, I found a sort of comrade in the weeds, if you will, on the battlefield. And she was the one that convinced me to leave. She was like, you need to go follow your dream. I wanted to travel more, frankly. So I went back to school and became a certified tour guide, and took people on their holiday trips. And because I had made that jump, and because I had left Atlantic, a year later she called me, and I had built three skill sets that were completely disconnected from one another. One, I was very good with people, connecting with people, knowing what they liked. Through a lot of parties in college. Two, I was well traveled because at this stage I had done semester at sea twice, once as a student and once as a staff member. I actually left Atlantic and went back on semester at sea. And then the third thing was I had an entry level experience in all facets of the music industry. So booking agency, management company, radio station, record label, but all short, very intern to assistant level gigs. So I had a baseline perspective on the different components. And those three things is exactly what Bon Jovi management was looking for without knowing that's what they were looking for. They wanted someone who had a general understanding of the business, was well traveled, and was great with people. So then I rolled around like just filling in all the gaps, but none of those three things independently were a career path forward. And because I took the leap to leave, reframed me in this person's mind, she put me up for the job, and I got it, and the rest was history.
Yeah. Amazing, man. I think it's a good reminder for listeners just about how we don't always know how the pieces of the puzzle are going to fit together. And every experience you have, work experience or life experience or otherwise, has value, even the ones that are seemingly on the surface, like, well, that was just some entry level thing. Like I didn't get anything from that, but it's hard to know how that might play in later, Yeah,
well, no, look, it's nearly impossible. And that's what, you don't know the steps. And that's why I push people to follow their instincts, because when you follow your instincts, that's when if you believe in destiny or fate, that's when you're going to find it. And you don't know what that is unless you listen to the instincts. And it's just, it's more exciting.
Well, this is a side note, Mike. I'm in a band, so we're coming out with a new album. So I am going to send it to you to try to, maybe during these VIP experiences with these big name bands you work with, you could just kind of like play the album in the background and just see if anybody kind of like, hey, who are these guys? Maybe. Anyway, I'll send it to you. I'm putting you on the spot here. Why don't you explain what you do at Super? Because, and you could drop the URL here and everything. People are curious, but I know you do VIP programs for artist tours. What does that mean?
Yeah, look, so I have this wonderful agency called Superfan, and we create, manage, and execute VIP experiences for global touring artists and festivals. So if you're a big fan of an act, if you go on Ticketmaster, you'll see, front row package for sale. And that will include something, whether it be access to the artist, backstage Q&A, autograph signing, photo op, some sort of exclusive merchandise bundle, sometimes an element of hospitality pre-show or post-show. So we create that language in partnership with management and the artist. We price it, we get it on Ticketmaster. You as the consumer purchase it on that platform. And then I have events teams all around the world that execute that. So we're in partnership with the tour. We are everywhere the shows are, and most of our clients are global tours. So as they go around the world with their concerts, we are attached to them. We have reps on the road, and then we hire locally in every market to execute the program that was sold on the local ticketing platform.
What is the most lavish VIP experience you've put together, do you think?
Well, lavish is a challenging term because we're inhibited by the restrictions of these venues, right? Most of these venues do not have modern day amenities. So one of the more memorable programs was on the Oprah tour, and she'll do this beautiful pre-show sound check experience with 100 fans. Do a Q&A from the stage. They all go on the stage to take a photo with her. We illuminate the video screens behind her. There's a great pre-show party, gifting stations. Everyone gets a hand autographed book from her. Sometimes thank you notes, depending. And then it's can be a beautiful dinner. They get to enjoy the show. And that when an artist or a celebrity of that character is willing to engage with the fans is when they're most special. And then, we get into things like on-stage seating. So on Queen and Adam Lambert, production built out these onstage opera boxes which are actually behind the stage. I know that sounds weird, but you become part of the show itself. So those guys would get a backstage tour. They go on the stage. They get to see all the instruments prior to the show starting. Again, a beautiful dinner pre-show, champagne wall, museum pieces. You get to see the costumes. And then during the show, you're actually on the stage. So how do you make a regular concert going experience something more than that and special? And that's what we do. We specialize in that. So it's really fun. We have a great team, really amazing client roster. We're growing extensively, and that affords me the opportunity to live and work in Portugal, but also travel around the world to attend these shows, manage my team, and then build the real estate sort of empire simultaneously.
Amazing. I mean, just combining, like you kind of said in your core mission statement on your website, curating your life and kind of combining all the things you love. I used to work as a tour manager for a band, so I could definitely know how challenging it can be with all the moving pieces of a tour and what is involved. So mad props for, I just kind of see what you put together, and I know behind the scenes how much effort and logistics are involved in some of these efforts. I'm sure it's like no small feat to pull some of these.
Yeah, the global supply chain is crazy. So, if we have one artist touring in a year, they might do 50 shows in, 20 different countries. And that's one of maybe a dozen, right? So we're operating across, I'd say 30, 40 countries a year, all the different time zones simultaneously. So currencies, insurance, local staffing, HR, payroll, merchandise shipments, it goes on and on.
The headaches never stop coming. I'm sure it can be tough, but well, interacting with some of these, I'm assuming you've met some of these people, talking about Oprah, you've worked with Barack Obama, all these people. Like, what have you learned from interacting with some of these people?
We have great stories and we have great lessons. I'd say those who have made it, and when I say made it, I'll refer to ones who've had a long career, a long successful career. They do two things well. One is they approach their art like a business, and while on surface, whoever it is, and however magical they are on that stage, most of them who are great are also very tuned into the business component of what their art is, right? And that goes from Oprah to Bon Jovi and down the list. So taking it seriously, treating it like a job is paramount to being an amazing artist or speaker or what have you. Now, to answer that question differently, the ones who seemingly have the most impact with their audience are the ones who do more than just perform, right? There's an element of social impact or charity or giving back. There's some philanthropic ethos established in their humanity. So again, this ties into like being a legend or having a legacy. And when you see people who've done great work and who've also given back to a large degree, it reinforces this sort of positive logic loop that it's important to remember those things from small acts of kindness to big, grandiose efforts.
Is having a legacy important to you personally?
Yeah, most certainly. Most certainly. I'm driven by impact. And it would be a lie to say ego doesn't get in the way of some of these things. Why would one want a legacy? I had a great friend that said, why can't my legacy just be a good husband and be a good father to my kids? He's like, I don't want anyone to remember me, that can be the legacy too. It doesn't need to be you're written in history books. The legacy can be small, but meaningful. So I'm on my path, whatever that means. I'll make as much impact as I can and, hopefully do some good work.
Do you try to measure impact personally in some ways? Sometimes it's hard it is hard to quantify in a lot of ways because of the ripple effect and other things. But I'm just wondering if that's a conscious sort of metric for you.
Conscious metric, no. Subconscious metric, yes. And I sort of equate it to just your ability to create, your ability to have an impact, how many things you're affecting. And at least for me, that's generally in a positive direction. Of course, you could have that in a negative direction. So I'm doing a lot all the time with many people, touching many lives and many sort of communities. And that's what feels natural. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of these things that you've done, we're going to get into the month skills challenge and stuff like that. But I know you did some work after the earthquake in Nepal, which was, we were actually in Nepal the year prior. And so hearing about that really hit home for my wife and I, because we were familiar with some of the areas. And yeah, can you talk about that experience for yourself? I mean, I think that's one where you can just say you went in and did something.
Yeah, the way I'd like to frame that answer is a little bit different than most. This is what I've volunteered at a few disasters in the last 20 years or so. And this is the natural progression of logic that I think a lot of people have. Is something terrible happens, you feel awful, you want to do something, and your brain starts calculating how to give back. And the first thing is like, oh, I'll give money because that's the easiest thing. And then you go, what will I give money to? Who will I give money to? Oh, whatever, UNICEF, Oxfam. And then, sometimes you give and sometimes you go, oh, I don't really know where the money's going. I don't know if I trust that organization. And then like it falls to the wayside. And then you have like this guilt and then this hopelessness. And then you end up just freezing. You freeze and do nothing, right? So specifically, you asked about Nepal. In this case, I have been well traveled, and when I was going through this logic loop, I was actually in Bali staying at a friend's resort with my good buddy, and I went, oh, I really want to do something, and my brain went like this, like, can I give money? Sure, but that's not really going to make a significant impact. Can I go there and help? And immediately my brain tried to find reasons not to go. That friction we were referring to earlier. My job, and at this moment, I had just wrapped a tour. I had like 2.5 weeks off. Okay, no place I had to be. Oh, ability to get there. I'm already in Indonesia. It ain't that far. What will I do? And I had worked with an organization previously called Volunteer Ministers, and they were mobilizing a group. And I kind of went, crap, I can go. And then my body and mind really wanted a reason not to go, but I didn't have a logical one. So I went for a 5K run with my mate, and I said, let's make a decision on this run. And we did the loop, and we came back and basically said, okay, we're in, not knowing what that would mean. And that sort of really set off a series of or a calling towards volunteerism and disaster response for me. And I've not done it's really just getting started, to be honest. That's going to take a much more prominent role in my life moving forward.
People have been on the volunteer front involved in various things, but since you have specifically been in these sort of, let's call them like disaster, what would you call it, recovery, or I don't know what the technical term would be, but I think people know what I'm talking about. What have you learned from being in those environments?
Look, we did Nepal. I did the Mexico earthquake. Most recently, I was there for the Moroccan earthquake. I was at 9/11 just after it happened. A few other things here and there, and for me, it was always short visits. Right, I wasn't able to spend more than 2 or 3 weeks in any one of these situations. I find that the small acts of hope are what matters, and giving that idea of hope, and the one moment of kindness and the smiles and the little actions can go a long way with people who have been suffering. And humans are resilient, right? Incredibly resilient. Like we're an incredibly resilient species. We just need a small thread of hope. And I will also say that don't be fooled by the ability of a single person's actions to actually make serious impact. At first, I was very put off by the idea of like, oh, I'm not an organization. What could I possibly do? But I actually find the ability to mobilize quickly, act independently, and change direction without having red tape or some overseeing body making the decisions can actually, at least in a disaster situation, create a lot of help. Now, long-term redevelopment, I think that's a little bit different, but that's not what we had done.
Yeah, I had a guest on pretty recently, and one of the call to actions was like, find a gap that you can fill and fill it. And I think that's what you just shared is, I just like that line of thinking. It's like, instead of seeing the disadvantages of, in this case, being a solo operator, let's call it, trying to make a difference, seeing the advantages, not avoiding the red tape and things like that in this situation. I think that's I think that's always a really healthy way of thinking, if you can just kind of step out of the emotional part and just be like, yeah, what are the advantages to this situation? Okay, it's really easy to see on the surface like what some of the challenges are, but what are the actual advantages here, and how can I leverage them to make the most impact?
Yeah, look, a really positive mindset shift, whatever it is, often people see the blocks or the no's or the barriers. And if you just like stop when that's occurring and you go, okay, cool. How could it work? How could I go to Nepal and volunteer? How could I quit my job and step into my passion, right? And you just start coming up with solutions. It actually, the mind will go into this positive feedback loop of start pumping out solutions, and that friction that you're feeling will not completely dissipate, but it'll slowly get stripped away.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been back to Nepal to climb Mount Everest, which is freaking insane. Congratulations. How long ago was that?
It was Everest Base Camp. I'm still very proud of it. And that was last April for my 41st.
Everest Base Camp. Okay, sorry, I got it wrong. That is a big difference between that and the summit, but still pretty awesome.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Whenever I do an adventure like this, it always comes down to the locals, right? In this case, the Sherpa community, the history, the religion, the language, and protecting these amazing, amazing moments of nature. So frankly, physically, it wasn't that challenging for me. It's a modest trek, a modest 7-day trek up, some altitude sickness, not particularly dangerous to base camp at least, but arduous. And it's all day, every day. So I'll be back. I'd like to do the Everest Marathon. I love physical challenges, and the more I do, the more addicted I get to pushing the envelope of what's possible. So there's going to be, I'm really just stepping into that chapter, and things are about to get real weird.
What's weird for Mike?
I mean, look, I'll tell you, what I'm stepping into now is I'm doing like a 90K. That's a 52-mile Mount Blanc ultramarathon in June.
Okay. That sounds fun.
I do Ironmans and what have you. But what's weird, what's wild, like I want to run across the Sahara Desert. That's one I have penciled for next year. It's a multi-day, 250-kilometer race through the Sahara. Things like this, things that the older version of me would say that's impossible. And now it's like, oh, and not only is it possible, like it's inevitable. It's just a matter of which ones do I select and make the priority.
It's not impossible. It's inevitable. It sounds like maybe addictive too, in some ways. It kind of. Have you heard about the guy that runs in the Darth Vader costume through Death Valley on the hottest day of the year?
I have heard about this guy. Yeah, there's a few psychos out there. We got one guy running across the length of Africa right now. He's on day like 290.
It's crazy, man. It's like the Forrest Gump fantasy, that one. You just go, and then you go around the block and around the corner. You just keep going. Next thing you know, you got a beard down to your knees. Well, I mean, is that tough with everything you have going on to kind of find time for the training and all of the preparation it takes for these things? What's your advice there for like busy people to participate in like their version of that? Maybe not everybody's going to do an Ironman, but maybe they want to do like their local 10K or whatever.
Yeah, look, it's incredibly challenging. The consistency is what I envy of a quote unquote normal life, having the nutrition and the same bed every night and your running shoes where they're supposed to be and maybe a bike. So I think people who have a more stable life are at a huge advantage. And it's just about, again, you make the decision, you set a goal, and then you prove to yourself you're able to stick to that goal. There's so much science behind the benefits of outdoor physical exercise. Most of the complaints that I hear from friends and colleagues about their mental state, their physical state can easily be solved with hydration, sleep, and some exercise. And it's astounding that, so many people revert to pharmaceuticals and other ways to cope when they're not doing the basics of what's needed as a human to get out of that sort of hole. So I'd encourage people, again, just take that first step, go for a 1K walk, a 1 mile walk, half a mile walk, and slowly build. It's not about how far you go, how fast you go. It's just consistency. That's what's most important. So while an Ironman or a 90K race seems extreme to most, with small, consistent training, it actually becomes incredibly achievable.
The holy trinity of self-care, could we call it? Hydration, sleep, and exercise?
Sure. It's like, I'm depressed. Do you drink water? No, I don't drink water. Well, let's start with that. Let's start with that.
I must confess, I had coffee and a chocolate before this interview, so I'm straying. Month in the making was your journey where you spent 12 months in 12 countries learning 12 different skills. And on the first video you documented it on YouTube. You said this was a personal, lifelong dream. This was a quote from the video.
Yeah, man.
I mean, was that always was that an idea you had for a really long time? I want to get into this whole project because I think there's so much to learn from this. But yeah, when did that become even a thought for you?
So month in the making, as you said, was 12 countries, 12 unique skill sets over 12 months. I've finished 7 of them. I have 5 left. The first idea.
It's not chronological. You're giving yourself some flexibility.
Well, look, COVID provided an opportunity to step into that.
Okay. It's a modular challenge. Modular challenge.
So look, that's a perfect example of what we're talking about, like timing and taking the first step and waiting for the right moment. I was intending on doing that later in my life. And then COVID happened. So I said, okay, now's the time. Let's just see what happens. And look, I didn't finish it. I intend on finishing it, but I started and I had learned a lot. So it's all good. The first thought I had about that was going back to childhood. And I used to just fantasize about being a samurai ninja with a secret lair in my closet in my backyard. So it sort of started there, as any kid would have. And then as I got older, I just, fantasized about different types of lives. I wish I could surf. What would it be like to learn salsa? And these things would constantly come up. And about 12 years ago, I was on a trip with a buddy and really just started laying into this concept of what that would look like. It took many different iterations and evolutions. The first one was much more challenging. I called it a week in the world, and I wanted to spend 1 week in every country in the world. Realized this would take me, I forget the math, I think that was like an 8 or 10 year commitment. I said, okay, maybe let's just do 12 months in 12 countries and we'll start with that. So really it was more about assuming different identities and diving into different communities as opposed to actually learning the skill set. And that was a unique reframing of what I was doing. First, it was the identity or the beingness, and then it was the doingness of the skill or the action. But it was profound, my lifelong dream, and I just can't wait to get back into it.
I think it's a really cool way to think about it. I hadn't thought about the identity community component. I mean, we think about, like any activity, hobby, skill, whatever, like there's going to be a group of people that are really into that. And then you get to meet those people that are passionate about.
Well, check it. Like, okay, going surfing or being a surfer, those are very different things.
Right.
So,
So you became a surfer for a month. You didn't go surfing. You became a surfer for a month.
I would say I was better at being a surfer than I was at surfing. So what does that mean? Waking up at 4:30, doing morning stretches, being in the ocean by 5:30 or 6, having coffee by 7, taking a nap at 8. So that whole thing was, such a blessing, because that's not the person I am day to day. So just being able to step into that for a month was incredible.
Yeah. I love that lifestyle. I love that whole,
of course, man.
It's 8 a.m. and you're like, you've already had like a full day of exercise and you're drinking warm coffee, and
it's an absolute fantasy. For me, it's not the life I choose to live right now. I'm choosing other things, but for a month, amazing.
Yeah. So what were some of the other, give us a sampling of where you went and what you did. And I want to hear like your big lessons from the whole project thus far.
Got it. Surfing in Costa Rica, salsa dancing in Colombia, capoeira in Brazil, freediving in the Bahamas, conservation ranger in Kenya and Tanzania, sailing in Croatia and France, and cooking in Italy, but I went there with the intention of learning how to cook. And what ended up transpiring was more stepping into biodynamic farming and like food source and my relationship with food versus actually becoming a chef. And so that was 7 of the 12, and the remaining 5 mainly are in Southeast Asia. Buddhist or Shaolin monk in maybe Tibet or China. I'd love to do the nomadic eagle hunters in Mongolia. Potentially treasure hunting in Egypt. That was penciled for a little bit. And going back to the original concept, samurai warrior in Japan.
I feel like maybe on some level we are a bit of kindred spirits, because I had like ninja weapons on my wall growing up and definitely had a ninja outfit and watched a fair share of Shaolin monk kung fu movies. I always had the dream of like, the Shaolin monk like training areas. They pick up like the burning thing and it gets burned into their forearms and they have to, all the crazy things you see, but that's so cool, man. Well, what a beautiful mix of things, it's not all physical. It's like you have a nice mix of.
So at there was a sort of, what's the elevator pitch? And this was very much the 40-year-old man's version of Eat, Pray, Love. And we came up with fight, feast, and freedom.
Okay. Yeah. But why do the YouTube thing? Like, why did you even put it on YouTube?
It was more for personal, just personal documenting of it. So I knew it was going to be arguably the most profound experience of my life, and I wanted to keep a record of it. At the same time, I had no interest of personally doing that. I knew I would never edit the videos nor properly tell the story. So I hired this kid named Diego, hasta luego Diego, who was fantastic, and a woman named Charisse. And between them, they were sort of my sidekicks for those 7 odd months, and got to tell my story. So I thought it would be important for me and my family and my kids whenever they come. I also knew that many people during COVID would like to see that story, right? They could connect to it, and it would be entertaining.
Yeah. Wait, are there kids on the way or something?
No.
Are you?
Not,
is there
not
a
yet.
late breaking news here?
No. As far as I know, no.
Right on. Okay, so what were some of the biggest lessons from that project that you still carry with you?
The community aspect of what, again, the skill doesn't really matter. It's about the embodying these lifestyles. And I think it's a great reflection on what we were talking on earlier on in the call. What's my job? What's my work? Who do I want to be? What's my passion? And realizing that there are an infinite number of opportunities out there, and they're all fine. You could be a conservation ranger in Kenya and be incredibly happy. You can be a salsa dancing instructor in Colombia and be totally fine. If you're doing what's calling you, you're going to be fulfilled to some degree. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean financially, but the people that were excelling, I found true masters in each of these fields, real people that were completely dedicated to their thing, right? Surfing instructor, salsa instructor, freediving instructor. And many of them had left their life to pursue this calling, this thing that they're now a master at. And to see that purity of cause, that their gift to the world was beautiful. So it sort of reinforces the concept that I always knew, that was implanted to me on Semester at Sea. You can choose a million different lives, and they're all fine, and everything's going to be good, as long as you're following your intuition and your calling. So that was part one. And part two is the importance of community. Those people that were most happy were those who had similar and like-minded folks around them who were supporting them. So again, the surfer community, the salsa dancing community, the free diving community, you attract what you put out. And seeing all these little pocket, super, super niche communities around the world that are just existing completely, was completely unaware of them prior to. Now they're part of my larger community. Is just so beautiful. And it makes me think, how many millions of other pocket communities are there that I have no context of? So hopefully that gives someone a little bit of faith in humanity and hope that they could do something different.
Yeah. Do you feel, after all of these experiences that we've talked about, do you feel less attached to your identity, whatever that means, having assumed other identities and dived into other communities and things like that? How does that change your relationship with your own identity? I'm using air quotes here.
Less attached to the outcome. Frankly, I failed all 7 of those activities I set out to learn.
What do you mean you failed?
If you looked at my skill by the end of the month, I could confidently say I failed all of them. So it was
like you didn't become proficient in them, is what you mean.
I mean, look, I caught a wave. I performed in a salsa show, but it wasn't about becoming a master in a month. You couldn't do that. It wasn't about succeeding in the skill. It was just about it was about the identity. So removing the concept of removing the attachment to the outcome. However, completely opposite of the question you asked, whereas I'm more attached to my identity because it's given me clarity on who I want to be and how I'm going to get there. So by living these other identities and by being tapped into these other communities, it's helped me refocus and gain clarity on my mission and my calling. So I got to wear different masks, if you will, or different skins for a month, only to reframe this skin and this character.
Yeah, that's so valuable, man. I mean, I can see that too. Like, I'm not sure if this is what you're alluding to, but I can imagine, like, we can all have sort of the occasional fantasy of like, oh, if I was living like this style of life, like the surf life where I just got up and surfed every morning at sunrise and lived at the beach, and that would be, then I'd be happy, or that would be so awesome, But like, you get to live that and then see, like you said, it's just another version of life. It's there. It's something you can do, but it's like by trying those skins on, it's like you're more consciously choosing to step back into your own skin.
Yeah, completely, completely. So,
yeah. Would you say advice for a listener who maybe wants to do something on a similar scale that still has an impact? Perhaps this can be done even locally, if you think about it like that.
Yeah, look, a month is not a long time to do anything. So committing to whatever, learning a dance, a language, a martial art, try something for 30 days. If you hate it, you hate it. And if you might be surprised that you find a calling you didn't know about.
Let's talk a little bit about life in Portugal. What advice do you have for making a life in a new country?
I'm sitting beside my friends in Portugal here who have seen me along the way. The biggest piece of advice is embedding yourself locally with people from the area. So without that, you're going to feel disconnected and form I won't say superficial connections, but inauthentic connections to the local culture and local people. So I don't think I have any friends here who are expats. I don't think so. Most of 90% would be Portuguese or are living in Portugal for some time now. So that's made all the difference because I feel connected to the land. I feel connected to the people. So that's the biggest piece of advice is if you're gonna take the leap of moving to another country and doing something drastic, take the leap. Don't go to the expat hub and work out of a co-working space with a bunch of New Yorkers and people from LA. Then you're still going to live have the American perspective and trying to lead an American life in a foreign country.
Are you learning the language?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. How's that going? Tough, huh? Learning a language. I find.
You get by, You get by.
Yeah.
Day by day.
Yeah. So what's your greatest hope for the next, 3 to 5 years with everything you're building there now?
This estate I'm sitting in now will be completely renovated. Is
this self-funded or do you have investors?
This project, we brought in investors in, a group of 5 or 6 friends. We're applying for an EU grant subsidy. The renovation cost will be between 4 and 6 million on this property. It'll be a luxury boutique hotel, event center, and artist residency. It's incredibly beautiful, huge, robust history, incredible energy. So needless to say, this property will be done. Another 2 that I'm working on, and then the footprint or the foundational real estate platform that I've envisioned for so long will be established, meaning there'll be enough passive income coming in that it'll be able to roll itself over, whether or not I continue with Superfan or my career. So real estate will be a sort of standalone, separate vertical to the business that I run.
What's your advice for having big thinking mindset like that, right? Like I feel like, the leap from solopreneur to the kind of like projects you're working on feels pretty big to me. And it's a lot of it starts with your mindset. Yeah. How do you approach?
Again, I'll go back to what I said previously. It's being solution driven. So this property specifically as an example, you can see it behind me. It's in disrepair. It needs a ton of work. Anyone who comes here falls in love with it and energetically they'll attach to it, but then they'll go, how would I possibly renovate this place? I'm in an agricultural area, an hour, 20 minutes outside of Lisbon. I don't know the carpenters, the contractors, the laws, but to see it from that lens, it's a hard no. To see it from the lens of, but imagine what could be created. I step into that solution-driven, cup half full lens 100% of the time, which certainly has caused me a series of unnecessary struggles in life, but the struggles are the opportunities, right? So when I moved to Portugal, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know the financial market. I didn't know the real estate market. I mean, it was truly spontaneous. I flew in for 36 hours, saw 8 properties, and bought the first one I walked into with no idea how I was going to get a loan or what any of it meant. So again, these 2 types of people, ones that just jump and other people who are calculated and they analyze the risk and step by step. Neither one's right. But either way, you need to be the person that says yes and takes risk. And when you come up with the no's, let's reframe those into how could they be yeses? And slowly the yeses start overpowering the no's and the opportunities come faster and faster and the waves get sexier and cleaner and, bigger.
Yeah. I struggle with that a bit. I mean, I've taken some of these risks and they haven't panned out and I've lost a lot of money on some things and it's hard to then do it again.
Yeah. Again, go back to the first imagery, like the waves. When you don't know how to surf, you're going to eat shit on that first wave. If you paddle back out, you're going to over and over, you get pounded and pounded and pounded again until you finally catch one. And then you're like, oh, that's how you catch the wave. So that's how I've done it. I've certainly, this business super fan. This is my third, if not fourth iteration of the same business. And finally it's connecting. Finally we have 12 employees. We're on the Inc. 5000 list this past year. We'll probably be again this year. You're not going to get it right the first time. But again, it's like the outcome doesn't particularly matter. And if you can reframe the fear-based mindset, fear or anxiety and enthusiasm are sort of the same energy, just with a different perspective. So when most people feel anxiety towards a project, I feel excitement because it's just the same energy with a positive twist. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be really hard. How am I going to do that? How am I going to find a contractor? Like, okay, let's figure that out. Like, that sounds like fun, Whereas like, how am I going to find a contractor? That'll never happen. It's the same logic. It's just a slight, maybe it's warped. I don't know. But
yeah, I guess kind of like being excited about the challenges instead of seeing them as destroying your life in some ways, or just like, well, I mean, and that is a tricky thing. Like, I have 2 kids now, so I'm a little hesitant. I'm in a place where I'm like thinking about jumping into the next thing, but I'm being very careful with what that is because I don't want to sacrifice too much of my time with them in my personal case. But it is part of the journey, As somebody who lives, I'm a Norwegian citizen now, and I live in Norway. But it's fascinating for me to hear how you've been able to do so many cool projects there. Even though I'm a citizen here, it's like another country, trying to figure everything out. It's all in another language. It's the same sort of thing. And it's not easy. It's not easy all the time.
How many friends do you have there who are Norwegian?
Yeah. Most of my friends are Norwegian.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you learning the language?
Yeah. I speak Norwegian. That took a while. That's a work in progress, man. I mean, always, I still do my Duolingo, and I still, I'm still trying to level up. But I don't have any, these are the conversations I have and I love to have. I don't have Norwegian colleagues or anything like that to commiserate with. But I get my practice where I can. Speaking of, just enjoying conversations, I've really enjoyed this one, man. It's been a pleasure connecting with you. I had one more question. In the Rolling Stone article you were featured in, you had a quote that I found curious. You said, for a while we were in the experience economy, but we're evolving into a transformation economy where people want more than an experience. They want to be transformed. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because we're always looking to stay on top of trends here on the Zero to Travel podcast. You seem to be a guy that's like kind of a bit ahead of the game with that kind of stuff, and maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, so that language came to me at a luxury travel conference that we host every year in Morocco. So this is what hoteliers and folks in the luxury travel space are referring to. Where, I'd say for the last decade, many things were coming up around the experience, and I value experience more over material goods. And I think most people are present to that fact now. So I'd say 2 years ago, I started hearing the language about transformational experiences, whereas just having a nice experience or memorable experience isn't enough. Folks want to actually be changed. People are looking for change. Because now experiences are everywhere. Going to the movies is an experience. You have a lounge chair and cocktails, and like everything is an experience now. So it's almost like the noise of the experiences and the level of the experiences has been stepped up. So now, in order to be memorable or impactful, you almost need to change the person attending the event or the holiday. So that is a huge challenge. And how you're seeing it, and I don't think it needs to be transformed in a hugely, impactful way, whereas they change their identity. But getting them to have one unique concept, one slight change of perspective, if you can achieve that, you've really gone above and beyond. I don't think it's possible in most cases, but if that's what you aim towards, you're probably going to get closer to doing something that is really special.
Yeah, cool. Along those lines with travel, do you think it's healthy to put that kind of expectation on a trip where you're like, this has to transform me in some way, or is it better to be open, or really any experience you go into, I think there's a bit of a balance there. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Look, from personal experience, right, the trips that matter most are I used to have an adventure travel company, and we would always layer in an element of cultural exchange or social impact or charity into those adventure trips. And that's the adventure itself pales in comparison to the element of giving back in terms of what people remember and how they connect on reflection to the trip. So while you certainly don't need to program transformation in everything that you do, I will say 100% certainty that when you are able to add an element of cultural exchange, giving back, helping others, that will always be the part that matters most, and I think is more than likely to lead to transformation. So whether it's for me now, it's like personal challenges. How far can I push my mind and my body? How can I layer in the giving back component into my business and into these trips that I plan? Even in the properties, how do I transform these properties into something new, but also paying homage to the past and the local communities and the culture? So this is why they're going to stand out more than just a luxury, another beautiful, cozy luxury thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, last question, I promise. This is a fun travel one. Okay, you're going to either be quarantined in Portugal or to see your family. You can do all that, but you're only allowed to take 3 more trips. And you have to give us 3 destinations that you would go to before you're forever quarantined either in Portugal or visiting family. I guess what I'm getting at here is some destinations worth visiting, but we're putting a little wrapping around it. So
for me, selfishly, or what I'm going to recommend to people?
Both. I mean, well, they could be one and the same. Just give us 3.
Look. For if you're starting your travel journey, Iceland, New Zealand, and Brazil, 3 completely different landscapes with so much varied nature that you can go to any one of those and have the ultimate expansive, mind-blowing adventure trip. Having been to those 3 places, I would choose for Antarctica. I'm yet to run a marathon. I want to run a marathon on every continent, so I would just tick that off the list to become legendary. Bhutan and Ghana.
Nice. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Do you want to share here where people can find you? Of course, we'll link up to all this stuff.
Oh, sure. I mean, look, I post a lot of stories on Instagram, Savas on the go. Always trying to update people on where I'm at, what I'm working on. So it seems to be a lot right now, but I assure you, we're just getting started over here. So there's going to be a lot of physical challenges, a lot of giving back, a lot of business growth, and a lot of real estate plays in the future here.
Nice, man. Well, I'm glad we're connected, and maybe next time we can do this in person somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, man.
Could be nice.
Norway.
I'm down. No, I appreciate your time, Mike. Thanks for sharing, some of your story here today, and for all the great advice and the inspiration. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Jason. My pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Take care. There you have it. Special thank you to Mike once again for stopping by the show. And I'm going to leave you with a quote that I think, I saw this one today and I thought, oh, this kind of ties in pretty nicely with this episode and Mike's sort of attitude towards things. And he seems like a guy that just kind of will dive in and tackle things head on. And I know that's not everybody's personality, but he shared a lot of different angles and ways to kind of look at things and reframe things. That was a word that came up a lot, reframing. And that is an important word, at least it has been in my life, when you are needing a perspective change. Sometimes it's good to take that meta look at things and figure out how you can reframe it for yourself. And some of that advice he shared on living your best life the idea of following your intuition, just checking in and seeing if that X, Y, or Z thing you're thinking about feels expansive or you feel like you're closing off. It feels like it closes you off. And I mean, this is a simple way to kind of just really understand what is going on underneath all of the thinking mind stuff, all the practical mind stuff. Like, what is your body actually telling you? Because it can tell you a lot. And if that sounds hippy-dippy to you, you can call it checking in with your gut, a gut check, whatever. It's the same principle. Your body knows a lot. And sometimes we just try to rationalize the choices we make because we think they're the smartest thing to do. I'm using air quotes, even though our body's telling us something else. And maybe on the surface, it is the most sensible thing to do, because maybe everybody around you will think, well, of course that's a sensible thing to do. You know, you stay in that job, or you stay in that relationship, and you've dedicated your life to this, or whatever. I'm just pulling random examples off the top of my head, but you get the point. Check in with the body. Don't forget to check in with the body, and you might be able to make some decisions from there, which can be scary because it doesn't feel as thought out, but the body does know, doesn't it? The body knows. Okay. Leave you with this quote from George S. Patton. Quote, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week." Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.